Hey, everybody. This is Carl. Welcome to our Monday night live call-in show. Anyway, happy to see everybody out there, and to all those who are watching us and will be watching us later, thanks for joining us. As you see the headline there, phone records of journalists seized by U.S. And if you saw what I put in the description, I wrote in there, not in the description, but in the title, the feed to this, the last half hour. The president gets angry at the press. He takes action. This time he may have gone too far, even for me. Let's see. And then I write, Dems call for joint session to address constitutional crisis. And then I wrote, the source of this headline, the New York Times, dated May 13th, 2013. 2013. He's talking about the phone records of 20 Associated Press reporters, and we'll jump over to that story right now. In fact, let's just get over there. See, it's from the AP, and they did a fact check on him on President Obama in September of 2018 when he was campaigning during the midterms, and they weren't real happy with the things he was saying, because he was talking bad at the time about how President Trump was treating the press. How he was talking bad about them, and they're like, yeah, he may talk bad about the press, but at least he didn't tap into our phones. It wasn't just the business phones either. It was their cell phones and their computers and the computers they had at home and everything like that. So, I mean, their cell phones. And the point of that was to try to send a warning to the press. Hey, don't try to, go against, the Obama administration. Don't go against me, or we're going to spy on you. And we're going to know everything about you. If you think about it, if they get your cell phones, that's everything. I mean, that's where you travel, where you've been, where you're going. That's like, if these guys are having affairs with women in hotels, then they could, if you wiretap their phone, then what they do is they don't just zap that phone, they zap everybody who you're talking to. They go 3-4 levels away. It's not just you and that's it. Whoever you call, then they start tapping that person's phone. And whether he must have had a FISA court warrant, and that allows 3, 4, 5, who knows how many levels going forward, going back how many years, 10, 20 years. So, if these guys are having affairs or anything like that, plus all their history, their Google search history, whether they're looking at porn sites or not. And, the press knew that, and the Associated Press knew that as well. So if you notice, this article was written in September of 2018, after President Obama was no longer in the White House. But, they didn't really kind of like how he was going around bad-mouthing Trump for being mean to the press and yelling at them and calling them fake news and stuff, when, at least Trump wasn't wiretapping their personal phones, their cell phones and stuff. So we'll take a look at this story here, and let's see here. Yeah, James Carl's opinion. Yeah, I love when HJ says that, man. It's just totally great. It's awesome. I think everybody who super chats, we all super chat, so we have our name called out. It's like, yeah, man, this is so cool. But all right, let's take a look at this story here, and we'll get to it right now. All right. Associated Press fact check. Obama doesn't always tell the straight story. And the point of this is, you saw the headline, President Obama on whistleblowers and the media double standard. President Obama had a much different take on whistleblowers, especially when it came to like Edward Snowden. You see as we go through this story, Edward Snowden, I guess you could say, was a whistleblower. And like the current whistleblower, Snowden didn't fit into the statute, albeit Snowden wasn't giving away information on the president of the United States, so there wasn't an executive privilege issue. And the reason why, remember, the acting director of national intelligence, he was saying, hey, this is the first. I had to check with the White House counsel, because there was executive privilege involved in this, and then that had never happened before. As I explained the other night, the reason why it never happened before, because the specific statute, 50 United States Code, section 3033, 3033, subsection K, subsection 5, subsection A through G, where it defines what a whistleblower is within the intelligence community. It limits it to what's known as an urgent concern, and that has to deal with somebody who is under the responsibility, within the responsibility and authority of the Director of National Intelligence. So the reason why you never had a whistleblower, consider himself to be a whistleblower, that was like, if you will, diming out the President of the United States, reporting on something he was doing, was because that whistleblower statute never applied to the President of the United States, because the President is not within the authority and responsibility of the Director of National Intelligence. Just the opposite. Director is under the authority and responsibility of the President, like all of the cabinet members are. And again, to try to fit the President into being within the authority of the Director of National Intelligence would flip the Constitution on its head. Article 2, the chief executive, nowhere in the Constitution to say that the president is answerable to cabinet members within their authority. They can tell him what to do. That's not true. They can try to tell him what to do. The president can fire anybody he wants. You're fired. You're fired. There you go. So anyway, same thing here. Where Snowden, and you'll see Obama says, well, gee, Snowden should have gone through the proper channels. Well, Obama knows, being a constitutional law professor himself for, I think, God, it was like 18 years or something, or 10 years at least. He knew that statute didn't apply for independent contractors, and Snowden was an independent contractor. That law wasn't amended, in fact, till 2018, when it provided for protection, whistleblower protection for independent contractors. And Snowden was an independent contractor, and Obama knew that. So when he says, we should have gone through the channels, well, there was no channel for him to go through as a quote-unquote whistleblower without leaking classified information and be subject to prosecution, which the Obama administration did, in fact, do under Eric Holder and subsequently Loretta Lynch. So, he had a different take on whistleblowers. He prosecuted them. He didn't care. He chased them down. He forced an Air Force One, if you will, of a foreign country to Bolivia. He forced that plane to land and have it searched for 14 hours, if you will. It kept on the ground for 14 hours and had it searched. You can imagine President Trump, forced a plane down to have it searched to find like a whistleblower or something like that on it to arrest him. You never hear the end of it. But yeah, he did that. That was the president of Bolivia, the guy who just recently resigned, I think yesterday, as a matter of fact. So that guy. So anyway, so there you go. But anyway, let's take a look at this. AP fact check. Obama doesn't always tell the straight story. Let's see. Get down here. Okay, President, again, this is from September of 2018. Former President Barack Obama's recent denunciation of President Donald Trump's treatment of the press overlooks the aggressive steps the Justice Department took to keep information from the public during his administration. Obama also made a problematic claim that Republican sabotage has cost 3 million people their health insurance. With his return to the political Donnybrook on behalf of Democrats in the November elections, again, this is from September 2018, Obama has brought a once familiar style back to the discourse. It's measured, nuanced, and distinct from the torrent of his statements from Trump. That doesn't mean Obama always tells the story straight. And that's another thing I keep hearing. It's like, why do people why are people so upset with President Trump, even though the numbers are so great? And you hear like Joy Behar, well, he's destroying the discourse in this country. Well, at least with President Trump, you have a discourse. He's not suppressing freedom of speech. He's not wiretapping the press. He's not, prosecuting members of the press, using antiquated laws from 1917 to prosecute, leakers or whistleblowers or press who actually, if you will, collude with these whistleblowers to get their stories out. President Obama did just that. So at least we have a discourse. The most transparent president we've ever had is President Trump. You can always find him. He's always on the way to a helicopter. You can always grab him for some questions, and he'll stop and he'll answer a bunch. Meanwhile, the helicopter's sitting over there. The staff is probably going crazy. Come on, we got to go. And he's like, no, let me answer some more questions. But anyway, so let's see. Obama campaigned in Illinois and California last week with more politicking planned. Here's a look at some of his remarks. He said, it shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say that we don't threaten the freedom of the press. Because it's so amazing that he actually is saying this out loud. People are like, oh, yeah, they don't remember from just a few years earlier. Freedom of the press, because they say things or publish stories we don't like. I complained plenty about Fox News. Well, he doesn't mention the Associated Press, but you never heard me threaten to shut them down or call them enemies of the people. Well, he actually did spy on James Rosen, who worked for Fox. He said that at a rally back in Illinois during the 2018, the facts. Trump made some the Associated Press. These are not conservatives at the Associated Press. Okay, these are liberals too. The facts. Trump may use extraordinary rhetoric to undermine trust in the press, but Obama arguably went further, using extraordinary tactics to block the flow of information to the public. The Obama administration used the 1917 Espionage Act with unprecedented vigor, prosecuting more people under that law for leaking sensitive information to the public than all previous administrations combined since 1917. Obama's Justice Department dug into confidential communications between news organizations and their sources as part of that effort. In 2013, the Obama administration obtained the records of 20 Associated Press office phone lines and reporters' home and cell phones, seizing them without notice as part of an investigation into the disclosure of information about a foiled al-Qaeda terrorist plot. Like, it wasn't like they were like, okay, we got to get this information about a plot, terrorist plot, get ready to take effect, and we got to, wiretap somebody's phones. Now, they just wanted to know who leaked the story. Okay? There you go. And they, I guess, went to the FISA court or used FISA 702 or whatever they did. So AP was not the target of the investigation, but called the seizure a massive and unprecedented intrusion into its news-gathering activities, betraying information about its operations that the government has no conceivable right to know. So Obama's Justice Department also secretly dogged Fox News journalist James Rosen, getting his phone records, tracking his arrivals and departures at the State Department through his security badge use, obtaining a search warrant to see his personal emails, and naming him as a possible criminal co-conspirator in the investigation of a news leak. The Obama administration, the New York Times editorial board wrote at the time, has moved beyond protecting government secrets to threatening fundamental freedoms of the press to gather news. Okay, and that was President Obama during his administration compared to Trump during his. And here's a story that was done at the time. This was a headline I put up there: phone records of journalists seized by U.S. Let me drop this down. There we go. All right, from New York Times from May 13, 2013 by Charlie Savage and Leslie Kaufman. Federal investigators secretly seized 2 months of phone records for reporters and editors of the Associated Press in what the news organization said Monday was a serious interference with AP's constitutional rights to gather and report the news. AP said that the Justice Department informed it on Friday that law enforcement officials had obtained the records from more than 20 telephone lines of its officers and journalists, including their home phones and cell phones. Said the records were seized without notice sometime this year. And the organization was not told the reason of the seizure, but the timing and the specific journalist targeted strongly suggests they are related to continuing government investigation into the leaking of information a year ago about the CIA's disruption of a Yemen-based terrorist plot to bomb an airliner. The disclosures began with an Associated Press article on May 7th, breaking the news of the foiled plot. Organization had held off publishing it for several days at the White House's request because the intelligence operations were still unfolding. So they even complied with the White House. Hey, Rocky, how you doing down there? Good seeing you. So they even held off, for the White House. Said, hey, can you hold off on publishing this for several days until we get the intelligence cleaned up on it? And they said, yeah, no problem. And then they published it when they wanted them to. And then what do? They go and spy on them, and get their personal information. So they sent a clear message to everybody: hey, don't mess with us. We'll prosecute you. And here's another interesting story. And as far as spying on people and things of that sort, here's a story from, let's see, CIA directors from Washington Post. Let me double check. There it is, Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. CIA Director John Brennan apologizes. This is from July of 2014, again, also during the Obama administration. CIA Director John Brennan apologized for search of Senate committees' computers. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. The CIA Director, obviously at the behest of President Obama or the knowledge of President Obama, albeit the press never asked, what did the president know and when did he know it? They never bothered to get to that question. You'll see something here on that. I mean, they just said, they asked Josh Earnest, well, is the president okay with John Brennan? Is he going to fire him? Oh, no, he's fine. He's fine with him. Can you imagine if Trump had Gina Haspel, the CIA, spy on Adam Schiff's intelligence committee, and then got caught doing it, and then just said, and then they imagine the press conference for that with the press secretary, I think it's Mr. Gidley, for President Trump, and they said, hey, is he going to get rid of Gina Haspel or for doing this? Oh no, he has a lot of confidence in her. He's fine with what she's doing. Well, and then of course the follow. Well, what did the president know about it? Did he approve this? None of that was asked during the Obama administration. See, a lot of people on the left don't understand why we get so upset. We get upset because we don't want, ass-kissing reporters for President Trump. We just want to be treated the same way President Obama was treated, which in many ways was ass-kissing, if you will, nonetheless. But still, I mean, there was no deep dive into this story. I mean, here we go. This is a separation of powers issue. You got the executive branch spying on the legislative branch, hacking into their computers. Who knows what else? This is only what they, computers, probably cell phones, emails. Who knows everything? The whole 10 yards. And other than a few people getting upset and a couple of stories about it, there were no big roundtable discussions, no above the fold front page stories for weeks on end, no hand wringing by Chris Matthews or Rachel Maddow. Oh my God, democracy is dying. Oh my God, we need a joint session of Congress. We have a constitutional crisis. Well, there was a constitutional crisis right there. But I guess it's not a crisis unless the press says it is. If a tree falls in the forest, nobody hears it, doesn't make a sound. Well, the press doesn't report on it. It's not a crisis, not a scandal. But I mean, just flip it around a little bit. You can imagine what this would have been like right now. Forget about it. So Brennan actually had to apologize because this was in July. He apologized. Back in March, when he got asked about it, he denied it, and he even said, what did he say? He said, let's see, he made some threat. Let's see, what did he say? Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. There we go. Hold on. Brennan's apology to lawmakers was in sharp contrast to the defiant position he took when the dispute surfaced publicly in March. At the time, he warned that lawmakers would regret accusing the agency of wrongdoing. Yeah, I mean, this guy, and he's just allowed to stay in the Obama administration, no problem. Why? Well, we now know why, because Obama was using these guys to spy on his enemies. That's why. And in fact, Admiral, I can't remember his name. I covered this story, big story I did on June 18th, big video I did on June 18th, and it showed all the spying, all the wrongdoing there from the FISA court, and the FISA court abuse, and the admiral who's in charge of the NSA right before Obama left office, went to the FISA court and found that 85% of the FISA court requests from going back to 2012, including this time, were illegal or improper. So, President Obama was using these guys, at agency and DNI, Clapper, Brennan, et cetera, to spy on his enemies, political enemies. And, of course, we saw what happened in 2016 with, Misford and Downer and Stefan Halper and the foreign intelligence agents, spying on the Trump campaign. And these are all these guys. So, of course, he's going to keep them around. In fact, let's take a look here. Let me get to a video here. Let me get to a video of Josh Earnest answering a question after this came out. Let's see. Let me get back over here. Okay, hold on. Let's see. All right, so here's a video from the press conference. This is Josh Earnest, President Obama's press secretary at the time. So let's see what he had to say. Let's see how mad Obama was at Jim Brennan for what he did for spying on the Senate and Dianne Feinstein and committing a constitutional and causing a constitutional crisis. I guess that wasn't. So let's see what he had to say here.
John Brennan is a dedicated professional who has dedicated his time in public service to protecting the United States of America. That makes him a patriot, and it makes him someone who has the full confidence of the President of the United States. And the President wakes up every morning pleased to know that John Brennan and the men and women of the CIA are at work, using their skills and expertise to protect the American people. And the President is pleased to count him as one of the people who has been a senior member of his national security team since the very beginning of his tenure in office. And the President continues to rely on his advice to this day. I think
all right. Let's see. All right, let's jump back. All right. So you can see there, I mean, just imagine that press conference. And let me tell you something, there were no tough, hard-hitting questions, if you watch the rest of it, for Josh Earnest about, well, what did the president know and when did he know it? Did he approve of any of this? Did he approve of Brennan spying on Senator Feinstein and the other members of the Senate Intelligence Committee? Did he, none of that. It was just all like, oh, it's okay. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess everything was much calmer back then. You know, everything was much calmer because the press wasn't in such a investigative mood back in those days, or even you can say an antagonistic mood. But yeah, I mean, if they were in an antagonistic mood, if something like this popped up, again, you'd have the big, hand wringing sessions and front page above the fold stories in the New York Times, Washington Post going on for weeks. The big, what do you call it? Big roundtable discussions on CNN and MSNBC and Rachel Maddow, and going on for 20 minutes about how our democracy is in trouble. Where was Nancy Pelosi talking about any of this? Where was very few Democrats actually raised a big stink about it. Very few. I mean, it was not like a big deal to them. It was like, oh, that's okay. We can be spied on. It's okay. But hey, but he's so calm and he's so pleasant, and it's like, oh, we have such pleasant discourse. Everything's so peaceful. Yeah. Meanwhile, we're being spied on, and that's the whole point about Snowden. Snowden, gave it away. He said, hey, we're all being spied on. I mean, everything you do, your laptop. If the British had invented a system where if you have your laptop open or webcam, that they can actually turn on the laptop, turn on the camera, including the audio, and that little light wouldn't go on in the camera, so you wouldn't know it was on. That's why if you see the movie Snowden, you see him after he does this, he's in Switzerland and he's watching the guy do it. He's like, wow. And he goes home. First thing he does, he puts like some dark tape over the camera on his laptop, and his girlfriend's like, "Why are you doing that? Is everything okay?" "Oh yeah, just some problems with the laptop. I got to get it fixed. That kind of stuff." So I mean, it's just really goofy. So let's take a look at the next story here, and let's see. Okay. Oh, and of course, can't forget this. Call now. The phone lines are open. Call now. Phone lines open. Call now. Anyway, it's a live call-in show. We got phone number 775-273-8970. If you want to appear by vMix video phone call, send me an email to ca2jogger@gmail.com. Again, you see the email address right there on the top left, and phone number right above you, right on the top right. Anyway, there we go. All right, and let's take a look at the next story here. There we go. All right. It's from The Guardian. And let's see. All right. So now regarding Edward Snowden, here's a story here. Obama, U.S. will not engage in wheeling and dealing over Edward Snowden. U.S. President indicates he won't spend much geopolitical capital to apprehend the NSA surveillance whistleblower. After weeks of high-stakes international tension to find and apprehend surveillance whistleblower Edward Snowden, U.S. President Barack Obama indicated he would not spend much geopolitical capital to make the former National Security Agency contractor stand trial in the United States. Well, let's see. Not necessarily, because why? What did he do after that? He forced down, this falls from The Guardian, forced down Evo Morales' plane, the president of Bolivia. And this is an opinion piece from The Guardian. In saying it was an act of piracy. Denying the Bolivian president airspace was a metaphor for the gangsterism that now rules the world. So anyway, so what they did was, I'll just read the story. They write better than I do. So here we go. So he goes on to say, imagine the aircraft of the president of France being forced down in Latin America on a suspicion that it was carrying a political refugee to safety. Not just any refugee, but someone who had provided the people of the world with proof of criminal activity on an epic scale. Imagine the response from Paris, let alone the international community, as the governments of the West call themselves, to a chorus of baying in Washington, Brussels, and Madrid. Heroic special forces would be dispatched to rescue their leader and escort smash up the source of such flagrant international gangsterism. Editorials would cheer them on, perhaps reminding readers that this kind of piracy was exhibited by the German Reich in the 1930s. The forcing down of Bolivian President Evo Morales' plane denied airspace by France, Spain, and Portugal, followed by his 14-hour confinement while Austrian officials demanded to inspect his aircraft for the fugitive Edward Snowden, was an act of piracy and state terrorism. It was a metaphor for the gangsterism that now rules the world and the cowardice and hypocrisy of bystanders who dare not to speak its name. See, this is what happened. Here we go. In Moscow, Morales, this is again the president of Bolivia, this is back 14. In Moscow, Morales had been asked about Snowden, who remains trapped in the city's airport. And he was asked a question. If there were a request for political asylum, of course we would be willing to debate and consider the idea. That was clearly enough provocation for the Godfather. I'm pretty sure he's referring to President Obama. For the Godfather. We have been in touch with a range of countries that had a chance of having Snowden land or travel through their country, said a U.S. State Department official. Yeah. so they made the plane land. So anyway, the French, having squealed about Washington spying on their every move, as revealed by Snowden, were first off the mark, followed by the Portuguese. The Spanish then did their bit by enforcing a flight ban on their airspace, giving the Godfather's Viennese hirelings enough time to find out if Snowden was indeed invoking Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. Those paid to keep the record straight have played their part with a cat-and-mouse media game that reinforces the Godfather's lie that this heroic young man is running from a system of justice rather than preordained vindictive incarceration that amounts to torture. Ask Bradley Manning, the living ghost in Guantanamo. So anyway, Obama was so serious about getting this guy, he forced the plane of President Morales flying back from Moscow back to Bolivia to land, and then they wouldn't let it leave. He sat there for 14 hours, arguing, yelling, and screaming till they allowed the Austrians to actually search it, and that was all coordinated by the Obama White House and the State Department. Go figure. And so. And anyway, so here's another piece by The Observer. This was back in 2017, referring to Chelsea Manning, formerly Bradley Manning, and Edward Snowden will forever stain Obama's legacy. Under his administration, whistleblowers were punished and top government officials were provided impunity. Yeah, a little bit different, and, Snowden didn't fit in the statute, but neither does this guy. The current whistleblower, he doesn't fit into the statute either. But this guy Obama went after ruthlessly, and nobody was singing his praises, in the mainstream media, and definitely not in the halls of Congress. So gee, what's the difference? Oh, I know, it's President Trump. Oh yeah, that's okay. That has to be the difference right there. The only difference. So. Will, I wrote, hey Will, I meant Willow Dragon. Hey Willow Dragon, how you doing? But all right, so let's take a look at this. Chelsea Manning has suffered inhumane treatment over 6 years in detention after leaking classified state secrets as a United States soldier to WikiLeaks. And then Manning was convicted in 2013 under the Espionage Act and sentenced to 35 years in prison. And let's see, what else here? Solitary confinement, 14 months, torture, treatment of Manning under the Obama administration will forever be a stain on President Obama's legacy. Under his administration, whistleblowers were punished for providing the public with information as to the criminal behavior of the U.S. government. In contrast, top government officials were provided impunity after evidence was exposed. James Clapper, here we go, Director of National Intelligence. James Clapper committed perjury in 2013 when he lied under oath to Congress by saying the National Security Agency did not conduct mass surveillance on the public. NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden revealed the extent of this highly unethical government program, which President Obama has vociferously defended. Obama's administration called the telephone surveillance program a critical tool in the war against terrorism. However, 6 months later, the Washington Post reported that an independent review board ruled that there was not a single instance in which the program made a difference in counterterrorism efforts. CIA Director John Brennan lied about CIA officials hacking the computer servers of congressional staff congressional staff from the Senate Intelligence Committee when the committee was investigating the CIA's interrogation and detention program. I have grave concerns that the CIA search may well have violated the separation of power principles, Senator Dianne Feinstein said in 2014, adding that the CIA may have violated the Fourth Amendment and other laws. CIA Brennan and other CIA officials were not reprimanded in any way for this conduct. And I even love how they talked about it back then, like Feinstein, it may have violated the separation of powers. Not like today. It's like, it's a constitutional crisis. Oh, my God, all hands on deck. Oh, we got to do an impeachment. Where was the talk for impeachment back in 2014? Yeah, I don't remember hearing any. I don't remember hearing anything from anybody. Oh, my God. I mean, the president had the CIA spy on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Where was talk of impeachment? I mean, forget about quid pro quo and looking for this and looking for that and talking to this guy. You didn't have to talk to anybody. They admitted it, and the CIA chief even apologized for doing it. I mean, there was nothing to go find. It was right there. I mean, you could have issued articles of impeachment right there on the spot. It's a high crime and misdemeanor. Broke several laws in doing it. I mean, right, without a doubt. Without any doubt. Where was all the yells for impeachment back then? None. Feinstein saying may have violated the Fourth and Fifth Amendments and other laws, may well have violated the separation of powers. And anybody remember this story? It got buried pretty quick. No. Rachel Maddow didn't cover it like 3 nights in a row. Chris Matthews didn't cover it for like 2 weeks in a row. No. Nobody covered it. Yeah, that's kind of weird, huh? Go figure. So anyway, let's take a look at another video here. This will be interesting. This, I'm going to cue up here is a video from President Obama talking about, I believe this is 2014, got the American flags behind him. He's talking about Snowden. He's saying, well, I really don't dwell on Snowden that much. Yeah, well, after you try to get his guy's plane in the land to try to get him, they didn't dwell on him very much. But it's funny, you hear some of the things he's going to say here. And tell me if you find this kind of interesting, what he's saying about whistleblowers and leaks and stuff like that. So anyway, let's take a listen.
Given the fact of an open investigation, I'm not going to dwell on Mr. Snowden's actions or his motivations. I will say that our nation's defense depends in part on the fidelity of those entrusted with our nation's secrets. If any individual who objects to government policy can take it into their own hands to publicly disclose classified information, then we will not be able to keep our people safe or conduct foreign policy.
Think about that for a second. People just disclose confidential information, then we'll not be able to keep a country safe or conduct foreign policy. Yeah, you think? Maybe? Possibly? So people aren't leaking phone calls between heads of state? Possibly not a good idea, because who's going to want to talk to the President of the United States after that? But, you know, I mean, see, he gives this speech and everybody goes, oh, he's so noble. Oh, what nice discourse. And he always does that, you know, closes his mouth and looks around and, you know, yeah, I know you people love me. I can do anything. You know, President Trump jokes about I could shoot somebody on Madison Avenue and nobody would care. Well, this guy literally was was targeting American journalists, targeting the Senate, and nobody cared. Right? Nobody cared. And nobody said a thing. It was like, oh, well, you know, that's just him. But anyway, let's continue.
Moreover, the sensational way in which these disclosures have come out has often shed more heat than light, while revealing methods to our adversaries that could impact our operations in ways that we may not fully understand for years to come. Regardless of how we got here, though, the task before us now is greater than simply repairing the damage done to our operations or preventing more disclosures from taking place in the future. Instead, we have to make some important decisions about how to protect ourselves and sustain our leadership in the world while upholding the civil liberties and privacy protections that our ideals and our Constitution require. We need to do so not only because it is right, but because the challenges posed by terrorism and proliferation and cyber attacks are not going away anytime soon.
And you have to remember, he was giving this speech after it was found out that he also had spied on foreign leaders. He spied on Angela Merkel specifically. Remember, and it's funny, you know, the way SNL covered it. They made it was like a joke. It was so funny. Like they did a skit where they had, you know, a guy playing Obama and you know, this woman playing Merkel. They're on the phone and the actor goes to Merkel, "Hey Angela, how you doing?" And she says, "You know how I'm doing, Mr. President." And he's like, "Oh, yeah." And then everybody laughs. It's like, oh, that's funny. Yeah, no problem. It's like, you know, again, just we're not asking for the press to like kiss President Trump's butt. Okay, we're not asking for that. Just treat it the same way. Treat President Trump the same way you treated President Obama. I mean, my God, you know, every single, and you'll see it here. They even change his words to make him sound better, you know, in this next piece, how the press did that. You know, if he said something that, oh, that doesn't sound good, we'll just change what he said. Literally 5 seconds after they play what he says. It's pretty scary. You know, President Trump, though, he misspells something on Twitter. It's like the end of the world. I mean, there's another constitutional crisis, you know, right in front of us. So anyway, let's continue on with his wonderful flowery speech and, you know, with the flags behind him and like, oh, nothing to see here. And he's saying we have to protect our civil liberties. Meanwhile, he's the one spying on us. So I just love it. He says, oh, we have to do this. Well, how about you just stop doing what you were doing? Okay, and then how about you like shut those guys down, Clapper and Brennan, So then, 2016 came around. They weren't spying on President Trump. Oh, that's right. You wanted them to spy on Trump's campaign. That's why you needed Clapper and Brennan to stay around. Even though they lied to Congress, even though Brennan spied on the Senate, you can't get rid of them. No, you got to play ball with the Senate. You got to play ball with the intelligence community, because you need them. I mean, I did a piece. Was he using those warrants in 2012 during the Romney campaign? Was he spying on their campaign? And was it just President Trump was the only one who got spied on for Russian interference, or was it other people as well that we don't know anything about? Was it Ted Cruz possibly, Marco Rubio? Did they get also spied on their campaign under some pretext, buried somewhere that unless we ask the right specific questions and get the right specific document, we're never going to find out about? I mean, who knows? But anyway, let's continue.
They are going to continue to be a major problem. And for our intelligence community to be effective over the long haul, we must maintain the trust of the American people and people around the world.
All right. Excuse me. Yeah, so I mean, here he is, like now he's going to come and soothe us all. He's going to protect us from who? From himself? He was the one doing it, and after the speech, he still kept doing it. And again, he allowed Brennan to go off, and obviously with his approval. There's no way these civil servants would have done any of this without the president's approval. The 2016 fiasco with Misford and sourcing out to Italian intelligence and British intelligence and Australian intelligence with Downer and with Stefan Halper. There's no way these civil servants would have done that without his say-so. With his say-so that it was okay, and yeah, do it. They're figuring, hell, we'll help Clinton win. He can maintain his legacy. Clinton will get into office. Of course, nobody will know about it if she gets into office. Nobody will look. Nobody will know. So, hey, we'll get away with it. And then, of course, lo and behold, President Trump wins. And now you see everybody scurrying around trying to hide the ball. And, of course, now this whole impeachment BS. It's just one big cover for the investigation. And like I said the other night, you have to start with the Biden because that's where it started in the Ukraine. That's where everything starts. And there's one witness, Chalupa, I believe her name is, that Schiff won't let him call. I mean, forget Hunter Biden. This woman definitely needs to be called. She was a contact person between the DNC, the White House, and the Ukrainian embassy, and getting dirt on Trump and getting dirt on Manafort and everybody else. And of course, Schiff doesn't want her called because who knows what she's liable to say. So on this next story, and this is, we see President Obama, he's kind of degrading, Edward Snowden, what he calls him, and listen to what he calls him, and then listen how the reporter, I can't remember her name, from CBS, how she repeats what President Obama said, but kind of not really. So let's take a listen to this.
Obama is showing frustration with the Edward Snowden case.
He spoke minutes ago about the NSA leaker this morning from Senegal at a news conference. Our Major Garrett asked the president about the U.S. effort to get Snowden out of Russia. He says he hasn't called Chinese President Xi Jinping or Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Mr. President, will you use U.S. military assets to in any way intercept Mr. Snowden should he at some point in the future leave Russia to try to find safe passage in another country?
I am interested in making sure that the rules of extradition are obeyed. Now, we don't have an extradition treaty with Russia, which makes it more complicated. You don't have to have an extradition treaty, though, to resolve.
And you're hearing like what sounds like an echo, but it's not. What it is, it's the interpreter interpreting for the other leader standing on the podium with them over there. So if it sounds like it's an echo, it's not. It's the interpreter, the translator, interpreting it in real time for the other leader. So here we go. But, it's even when the press just talks about, in the beginning there, you say, oh, he's showing some frustration and, he's such a nice human being. He's so calm and, oh, what a nice guy. But anyway, here we go.
Some of these issues. There have been some useful conversations that have taken place between the United States government and the Russian government. And my continued expectation is that Russia or other countries that have talked about potentially providing Mr. Snowden asylum recognize that they are part of an international community and that they should be abiding by international law. And we'll continue to press them as hard as we can to make sure that they do so. But let me, one last thing, because you asked a final question. No, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get a 29-year-old hacker.
And you see how he just kind of just degrades Snowden and says, oh, he's just some 29-year-old hacker. Well, we all know Edward Snowden was a lot more than just some 29-year-old hacker. I mean, he was given top-level security to everything. In fact, the program they were using to spy on people was actually, the code was written by Edward Snowden. He just had, when he wrote it, he goes like, oh, I didn't know it would be used for that. That's not what it was intended for. And, oh, yeah, it's great. I mean, this guy was a genius times 10. He rose up through the ranks really, really fast because he was so smart. He was great at writing code. He was kind of a natural. He never, I don't believe he ever went to college or anything. He just kind of picked it up when he was a kid, and he just kind of ran with it. It's like like being able to learn a foreign language and just know it backwards and forwards. So I'm just referring to, some 29-year-old hacker. Yeah, but why? Because he told everybody what this guy in the picture there was doing. He was spying on all of us. And, again, Admiral Rogers was his head of the NSA at the end of his administration. Admiral Rogers, saw all these FISA warrants and this FISA 702s. And it wasn't just FISA court warrants. They were using FISA 702s. The movie Snowden went into it pretty good. My video on June 18th went into it pretty good as well. And the president knew that. And so, the Admiral Rogers went back and went to the FISA court judge and said, hey, there's a lot of abuse here. And they went back and found that 85% of the FISA court warrants and the FISA 702 applications, which only requires the FBI director, James Comey, and the director of national intelligence, James Clapper, if they sign off on it, it's a way to get around going to court. In other words, it was written into the law that they figured, okay, if the FBI director was not known for getting along with, CIA or even probably they figured DNI, if those two guys signed off on a warrant, they didn't have to go to court necessarily to get one. They didn't have to apply to the court to get one. If they said it's an emergency and these two guys signed off on it, the FBI director and director of national intelligence, James Comey, Jim Clapper, if they signed off on it, they didn't have to go to court. And they were using that a lot. And they were bringing in contractors and everybody else to spy on, Barack Obama's political opponents, which is why he liked them so much and he kept them around. Because come 2016, he realized, okay, we can't have Trump win because that destroys my legacy. He'll undo everything I'm doing. So let's start trying to dig up some dirt and make a phony predicate for a full-blown FBI counterintelligence investigation. Which is, of course, Misford talks to Papadopoulos, tells him, hey, guess what? I got these Clinton emails. Do you want them from the Russians? And Misford wasn't Russian intelligence. He's Italian intelligence. He trained many of our agents. Runs a school in the hills above Italy, or above Rome, rather. So, I mean, he's right there. And he wasn't a Russian asset. He wasn't a Russian agent. It was just a setup. And they were hoping then Papadopoulos would tell somebody, one of their other guys, which in this case was Alexander Downer, over a bunch of drinks. And then Downer runs to the FBI and says, hey, guess what? To Peter Strzok and says, hey, this guy just told me that, he's they're shopping around for emails, the Clinton campaign from the Russians. It's like, oh, we got to open an investigation. Well, the whole thing was a scam. I mean, Misford was sent in by Brennan and probably Strzok and Comey to go tell Papadopoulos about emails. So then he would tell Downer, and then Downer would go, oh, my God, this is terrible. And then he goes to the FBI. I'm sure they're all laughing their asses off. It's like, hey, we just set it up. And then, of course, they use that to get an actual FISA court warrant, which then covers up all their tracks from all the misdeeds they've done before. Because they say all the information they got before that was from the FISA court warrant. Because you can go back, 20 years with the FISA court warrant. You can go out 5, 6, 7 levels. And the whole point of that was to do just that. It wasn't just spying on Carter Page. It was going 3 or 4 or 5 levels from him. And like Snowden, they show in the movie, every level you go, one guy talks to 20 guys. Each of those 20 guys talks to 20 guys, and so on and so on. Eventually, you end up with, Lewandowski, Manafort, Kellyanne Conway, the Trump campaign headquarters. In fact, Admiral Rogers, after he went to the FISA court judge in 2016, I believe it was September of 2016, to say about all this abuse going on, he after President Trump got elected in November, he met with Trump in Trump Tower. And he knew he was being bugged while he was in there, but he didn't care. And he told Trump, he goes, hey, look, we can't talk here. And he goes, why? He goes, this whole place is wired, Trump Tower. Now, what the Trump campaign did is they moved their entire, what's it called? Transition team, moved their entire transition team over to their resort in New Jersey. So, I mean, they still did all their public meetings and stuff and everything at Trump Tower because it was good PR, but all the transition team stuff, the real down and dirty stuff, they weren't doing at Trump Tower. So then after Carter Ash and Clapper found out, Secretary of Defense Carter Ash and Jim Clapper found out that he had gone and told Trump this, and also the FISA court judge, they went to Obama and they wanted Admiral Rogers fired, head of the NSA. Well, now Obama refused. He's like, okay, my hands may be on this, but I don't need them to be publicly on this. And he knew if he fired the head of NSA, well, there'd be a press conference or a whole bunch of leaks coming after that. So his hands were dirty, but he didn't want him to get that dirty. So he said, no, I'm not going to fire him. Plus, the damage was already done. He already told Trump. That's why when Trump said they were bugging my phones, and everybody goes, ha, 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 he's crazy. No, it was true. You can ask Admiral Rogers. I covered that on June 18th video. Go back and look. You see how the whole thing was done and how Admiral Rogers came in and just, told Trump everything. And then Trump tells everybody what's going on, and they think he's crazy. Then, of course, they released a Steele dossier so to make Trump sound like he's some kind of Russian asset. So anything he does say about it, well, he's just some crazy Russian asset. So anyway, so let's continue on listening to this coverage here. You can see what they're... Now, if you notice, President Trump said, I'm not going to scramble the jets to go after some 29-year-old hacker. That's what Trump said. So watch this.
Snowden is still believed to be inside Moscow's international airport. It's interesting, Gail and Charlie, to hear the president say, I'm not scrambling some jets for some 29-year-old leaker. The suggestion...
Now, see what she did? Now, referring to, she knew that when Obama referred to Snowden as a hacker, that was pretty derogatory. So she had to clean him up, right? She didn't want people to hear hacker because she was like, wow, the president's really petty, he's really disgusting, putting this guy down, putting down a whistleblower. Remember that you're not supposed to put down whistleblowers. You can't even talk about them, right? So, she had to clean him up. So, she's sitting there listening to this tape. I mean, literally the tape was on 8 seconds before she said something. And she takes the word hacker and changes it to leaker. So here, let's check this out again. This is kind of interesting. We'll back this up real quick here.
Question. No, I'm not going to be scrambling jets to get a 29-year-old hacker.
Snowden is still believed to be inside Moscow's international airport. It's interesting, Gail and Charlie, to hear the president say, I'm not scrambling some jets for some 29-year-old leaker. The suggestion, of course, has been that as the plane was on...
Right. And so it's funny. He says, well, I'm not going to scramble jets to get the guy. Well, no, but I'm going to force down the president of Bolivia, his plane, basically like his Air Force One. I'm going to force his plane down and make it land where I have my guys ready to search it. And the State Department's coordinating the whole thing. And the reason why it had to land, I believe it had some kind of instrument troubles. Well, there's CIA right there. They're in Moscow. They know Snowden's in Moscow. Bolivia's been talking about maybe giving this guy asylum. And you don't think somebody got on that plane and gave us some kind of instrument trouble, so it would have to land. And then they had the Spanish deny them landing rights. The French also, and I believe the Spanish, the French, and I think the Portuguese. They said in that story. So they had this whole thing. I won't scramble jets. No, I don't have to. I'll just have Brennan's guys go over and sabotage the plane, make it land somewhere, and then we'll have our guys ready to go search it. He was ruthless. And forget about, you can't say anything bad about the whistleblower. You can't do anything about the whistleblower. Well, he was going after this guy pretty hot and heavy. Pretty hot and heavy. He was prosecuting him. And the story here coming up here in a bit, you'll see just how hot and heavy he was going. But let's finish on with the nice, and watch these reporters. Watch how they talk about Obama like, oh, he's so nice and everything's so nice. And just switch this around. Can you imagine any of these people talking like this about President Trump ever? I haven't heard it in 3 years. But anyway, let's go ahead.
On its way to Havana, it would cross into U.S. airspace, and though the U.S. could then scramble jets and take it down. The president said, I don't want to elevate this case to do a lot of wheeling and dealing.
Force it to land, not take it out of the air.
Yeah, take it down. Right. But he seemed a bit irritated, the president.
Well, he also seemed to me to want to put it in some perspective.
Oh, he seemed a bit irritated. Oh, poor guy. He's irritated. Must be something wrong. We must have done something. What did we do? We must have done something to irritate him. We should go apologize. Oh, that's Snowden. That bad guy. He's terrible. Wow, he must have really. He's so irritated. Oh, we should do something. We can get him like a puppy or something.
We have relationships with these people. This is not a thing that ought to be handled at the presidential level. They're people that are trying to change the circumstance and trying to get them to adhere to extradition laws.
Yeah, despite all the clamoring, he wants everybody to know we're on top of it and we're taking care of it.
Oh, man. I swear. I mean, if he got half that coverage, I mean, that'd be something else. But anyway, let's take this next. This next one is a letter written by Snowden's father, and let's see here. Let's go to this one here. And this was a letter written to President Barack Obama from Edward Snowden's father, Lon Snowden. Because, Barack Obama, and you'll see here, he could have pardoned this guy, could have done whatever he wanted. And President Barack Obama has always said he's a constitutional lawyer and, constitutional professor. And according to, let's see if I have it up. Let's see, this is from, I'll come back to this during a sec. But this is a statement the University of Chicago Law School they put out because people were asking whether Barack Obama was a former law professor. So, statement regarding Barack Obama. This is before he got elected. The law school has received many media requests about Barack Obama, especially about his status as senior lecturer. Because the Clinton campaign, when they were running against Barack Obama in 2008, was like, he's not a professor. Well, anyway, so they put out this statement. From 1992 until his election to the U.S. Senate in 2004, about 12 years, Barack Obama served as a professor in the law school. He was a lecturer from 92 to 96. He was a senior lecturer from 96 to 2004. During which time he taught 3 courses per year. So he had 3 classes per year he taught also as a professor. Senior lecturers are considered to be members of the law school faculty and are regarded as professors, although not full-time or tenure track. The title of senior lecturer is distinct from the title of lecturer, which signifies adjunct status. Like Obama, each of the law school senior lecturers has high-demand careers, blah, blah, blah. So, and one of the things President Obama said about, let me get back here. One of the things President Obama said, where are we? Here we go. One of the things President Obama said about Snowden was that, well, you should have gone through proper channels. Well, as we'll see here coming up here in a bit, there was no proper channel for an independent contractor, for a contractor working for the intelligence community to make use of the whistleblower statute. Just like our current whistleblower who doesn't fit into the statute, this guy did whatever he did. And of course, when they did it to when Snowden did it to Obama, they're like, oh, he's an evil guy. We got to prosecute him and hang him out to dry. This guy does it to Trump. It's like, oh, he's a hero. It's just a difference. But anyway, here's a letter written to President Obama from Edward Snowden's father, Lon Snowden. I won't go through the whole thing. It's a rather long letter, but it kind of just shows you some stuff here. So he starts out with, Dear Mr. President, you are acutely aware of the history of liberty and a history of civil disobedience and unjust laws or practices. He defines what civil disobedience is. And let's see. We submit Edward Snowden's disclosure of dragnet surveillance of Americans under the Patriot Act and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA. Amendments or otherwise were sanctioned by Thoreau's time-honored moral philosophy and justification for civil disobedience. Since 2005, Mr. Snowden had been employed by the intelligence community. He found himself complicit in secret, indiscriminate spying on millions of innocent citizens, contrary to the spirit, if not the letter, of the First and Fourth Amendments and the transparency indispensable to self-government. This is all during Obama's administration. Members of Congress entrusted with oversight remained silent or Delphic. Mr. Snowden confronted a choice between civic duty and passivity. He may have recalled the injunction of Martin Luther King. He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetrate it. Snowden chose duty. Your administration vindictively responded with a criminal complaint alleging violation of the Espionage Act. From the commencement of your administration, this is a pretty good statement on Obama's administration. From the commencement of your administration, your secrecy of the national security agencies' Orwellian surveillance programs had frustrated a national conversation over their legality, necessity, or morality. Right? Anytime somebody in the press talked about it, they got slapped down or spied on. That secrecy, combined with congressional nonfeasance, provoked Edward's disclosure, which sparked a national conversation, which you have belatedly and cynically embraced. Right. In other words, like now he's trying to say, oh, we should do something. Yeah, he's the one who was doing it. We have to take care of these people who are doing it. Yeah, it was him. Legislation has been introduced in both the House of Representatives to curtail or terminate the NSA's program. And the American people are being educated to the public policy choices at hand. A commanding majority now voice concerns over the dragnet surveillance of Americans that Edward exposed and you concealed. It seems mystifying to us that you are prosecuting Edward for accomplishing what you have said urgently needed to be done. Yeah, now he says we should do something. Well, why is he still prosecuting this guy's son, Edward Snowden? The right to be left alone from government snooping, the most cherished right among civilized people, is the cornerstone of liberty. And then, he goes on. We thus find your administration's zeal to punish Mr. Snowden's discharge of civic duty to protect democratic processes and to safeguard liberty to be unconscionable and indefensible. Trump even, says one bad thing about this, the whistleblower we currently have, then, oh my God, he's like the evil, right? But this guy was actually being prosecuted. We are appalled by your administration's scorn for due process, the rule of law, fairness, and the presumption of innocence. And let's see. On June 23rd, June 27th, 2013, Mr. Fine wrote a letter to the Attorney General, that's Eric Holder, stating that Edward's father was substantially convinced that he would return to the U.S. to confront the charges that had been lodged against him if three cornerstones of due process were guaranteed. The letter was not an ultimatum, but an invitation to discuss fair trial imperatives. The Attorney General, Eric Holder, has sneered at the overture with studied silence. We thus suspect your administration wishes to avoid a trial because of constitutional doubts about application of the Espionage Act in these circumstances and obligation to disclose to the public potentially embarrassing classified information under the Classified Information Procedures Act. Your decision, here we go, to force down a civilian airliner carrying Bolivian President Evo Morales in hopes of kidnapping Edward also does not inspire confidence that you are committed to providing him a fair trial. Neither does your refusal to remind the American people and prominent Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate, like House Speaker John Boehner, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, and Senator Dianne Feinstein, that Edward enjoys a presumption of innocence. He should not be convicted before trial. Yet Speaker Boehner has denounced Edward as a traitor. Pelosi has pontificated that Edward did violate the law in terms of releasing those documents. Bachmann pronounced that this was not an act of a patriot, and Feinstein has decreed that Dianne Feinstein has decreed that Edward was guilty of treason, which is defined in Article 3 of the Constitution as levying war against the United States or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid or comfort. You have let those quadruple affronts to due process pass unrebuked, while you have disparaged Edward as a quote-unquote hacker to cast aspersion on his motivations and talents. Let's see. In light of the circumstances above, we urge you to order the Attorney General to move to dismiss. Well, not only did he not move to dismiss, as he was getting near the end of his term, this is from The Intercept, Obama refuses to pardon Edward Snowden. Trump's new CIA pick wants him dead. Okay, he had Pompeo was coming as the new CIA chief, and this story is from November 18th, 2016, as you see up there from The Intercept. And Pompeo says, hey, I want this guy to get the death penalty. I want this guy dead. Well, Barack Obama, President Obama knew that. And this is, after the election, he's already gone. He could pardon the guy. He could do whatever. But he chooses not to. He refused to. And remember, he teaches constitutional law. Okay, he knows about pardons. Okay, I mean, Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon. Nixon wasn't convicted of anything. Nixon wasn't even tried yet. I mean, he was tried in the Senate and removed from office, but he wasn't tried in a criminal court. And when Gerald Ford pardoned him, he had to forget being convicted. He hadn't been tried yet, and Ford pardoned him anyway. So obviously Barack Obama, who, God, I was, 9 at the time. I mean, I thought that was kind of interesting. At 9, he was, 13. Obviously he must have thought it was interesting, and obviously we all remember it. So watch what he says here when they ask him, well, you're going to pardon Snowden. This is hilarious. I mean, it's really, and he says it, and then nobody jumps on his ass either. Again, Trump just, trips over a twig. It's like, oh my God, the world's ending. He gave fish, too much food, and they're like, oh my God, he's terrible, right? This guy says, no, I'm not going to pardon them. This is what he says. I'll give you an advance. He says, I'm not going to pardon him because he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. So I'm not going to pardon him, like as if I can't, which of course you can. Okay, the right to pardon is unlimited. You can pardon somebody before they stand trial, while they're in the middle of trial, or after they've been convicted. You can pardon them anytime you want for anything that may or may not happen in the future. You can write it as broad as you want. The pardon power is absolute. It's in Article 2. It's a constitutional right. Okay? So anyway, Obama refuses to pardon Edward Snowden, even though he knew Pompeo wanted this guy dead, and see you later, have a nice day. So President Obama indicated on Friday that he won't pardon NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, even as President-elect Donald Trump announced his pick to run the CIA, Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo. Again, this was from November 2016. who has called for the traitor Edward Snowden to be executed. Pompeo has supported nearly unfettered NSA access. So anyway, in an interview with Obama published on Friday, German newspaper Der Spiegel asked, "Are you going to pardon Edward Snowden?" Obama replied, "This is crazy. I can't pardon somebody who hasn't gone before a court and presented themselves. So that's not something I would want to comment on at this point." I mean, look, constitutional law, that's, I'm an attorney, a lot of you know that, constitutional law, we all have to take that class. I think there's 2 you had to take in law school, and he taught constitutional law, taught 3 classes a year for 12 years, was a senior lecturer at University of Chicago Law School, one of the top law schools in the country, and he sits there and says, "Oh, I can't pardon somebody who hasn't gone before the court yet." Of course you can. He just says this, and he lies. He knows the truth. He's lying. And he just gets away with it. He says, "I'm going to lie, and I'm going to get," and people say, "Oh, okay, he's lying. That's fine. No problem. It's all good. Nothing to see here." So anyway, but P.S. Ruckman, editor of the Pardon Power blog, said Obama is wrong to suggest he's not wrong. He was lying. He knows the truth. Come on. Again, Ford pardoned Nixon. Okay. He wasn't even tried of any kind of crime. He was nothing. So anyway, said Obama is wrong to suggest he couldn't pardon Snowden if he wanted to. Ruckman noted that Obama had previously only granted pardons and commutations to people who had already been convicted. I just think what he may have better said is, the truth. I don't want to pardon the guy. I just think what he may have better said is, I prefer that he present himself to a court and then we'll talk turkey. Well, first of all, present himself to a court. This is November 18th. Okay, he's about to be out of office in 2 months on January 20th. So obviously, he's not going to be in charge of talking turkey to anybody. But technically, in terms of the Constitution, there are no restrictions at all. The operative Supreme Court ruling from 1886 states that the power of pardon conferred by the Constitution upon the president is unlimited, except in cases of impeachment. It extends to every offense known to the law, may be exercised at any time after its commission, either before legal proceedings are taken or during their pendency or after the conviction and judgment. The power is not subject to legislative control. Obama said that although Snowden had raised some legitimate concerns, he did not follow the procedure and practices of our intelligence community. That is interesting right here. Now, again, remember when this interview is being given. It's November 18th, 2016. What had just been going on in the intelligence community? They've been spying on the Trump campaign. So he says this. He goes, "Well, I don't follow the procedures and practices of our intelligence community." He's like looking for a way out. Okay, this is his cover his ass moment. "Oh, I don't know what they do over there. They're crazy over there." Even though when the evidence was clear and Brennan even admitted to spying on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and spying on Dianne Feinstein and going through their cell phones and everything else, and even after he found out, quote unquote, found out about the Associated Press reporters, all 20 of them being spied on their personal cell phones, he says, "Oh, I really don't know what's going on over there. Those people, they're all crazy. I didn't fire anybody, but, hey, I don't know what's going on." So, oh, they just let him lie all the time. It's just crazy. It's just lie. No big deal. So, all right. So anyway, take a look at the next story here. I'm going to grab some water real quick. Let's see. What do we got here? Let me take a look. Real quick. Here. What do we got? Yeah, you can't. Yeah. Yeah, Parker, you gotta keep it clean, okay, man. Yeah, keep it stuff like that on there, man. All right, so, all right. Normally, okay, but anyway, just don't do it again, please. Anyway, appreciate it. Yeah, because they look for any excuse to take conservative people off. We don't need to hand it to them. So yeah, I appreciate that. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, thanks, moderator down there. Appreciate it. So. Good catch on that one. All right, so let's see. All right, let's see. Next thing, what do we got here? I got that already. All right, so anyway, so one thing he also said was that President Obama said that Snowden should have gone through the proper channels instead of making it public. Well, he also knew that the statute didn't provide for protection for the here we go here for Edward Snowden because he was an independent contractor. In fact, here's this section here from Congressional Research Service from September 23rd, 2019. So, IC, intelligence community whistleblower protections have evolved in response to perceptions of gaps that many observers believe left whistleblowers vulnerable to reprisal. The first whistleblower legislation specific to the intelligence community. Let me see if I can make that bigger. That's kind of small here. There we go. You can see that better? Yeah. Left whistleblowers vulnerable to reprisal. The first whistleblower legislation specific to the intelligence community was enacted in 1998, limited to specifying a process. And then you get down to, let's see, get down here. The Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2014 codified these provisions, which were further supported with intelligence community implementation policy. In early 2018, Congress passed legislation to address perceived gaps in protections for IC contractors. So that wasn't passed until 2018. So back in 2013, obviously Snowden was not considered, he could not get whistleblower status. You know, much like our current whistleblower, he doesn't fit in the statute. He didn't fit in the statute, but that, of course, Obama was able to call him a hacker, and his people went after him and prosecuted him. And even though he knew that Pompeo wanted him dead, he wasn't going to pardon them either. In the actual code section here, 50 U.S. Code 3033, Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, I'll show you where the actual language was amended. Again, there's going to be subsection K5A. There's H, I, J, K. Okay, here goes 1, but 5. So it's 1, 2. Yeah, I'm a lawyer. We write stuff like this. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is where it was amended in 2018. So it says an employee of an element of the intelligence community. This is regarding what a whistleblower is in the intelligence community. An employee assigned or detailed to an element of the intelligence community, or this is what was amended. Here we go. Or an employee of a contractor to the intelligence community. So this was added in way after President Obama left office. So President Obama at the time knew that Snowden could not benefit from the whistleblower statute. Now, if you notice, though, also, there was no talk of like executive privilege, like I said earlier, because it never happened before because the president does not fit within the definition of what a whistleblower is in the intelligence community, because it says here, who intends to report to Congress a complaint or information with respect to an urgent concern may report such complaint or information to the Inspector General. As I said the other night, the whistleblower, in our case, his attorneys were saying, okay, he fits into the statute, this subsection A. But to get to urgent concern, hold on. You see urgent concern there, highlighted. Urgent concern is the legal definition. That's found later down here in subsection G. And you'll see how our current whistleblower does not fit into the statute. It says E, F, G. In this paragraph, the term urgent concern means any of the following: a serious or flagrant problem, abuse, violation of law or executive order or deficiency relating to the funding, administration, or operation of an intelligence activity. First of all, Trump's phone call was not even an intelligence activity. I mean, it was none of this was underground. I mean, as far as the funding for the Ukrainians, it wasn't like some black op or something. So it wasn't even an intelligence activity to begin with. But this is the important part. So say it is an intelligence activity. It wasn't, but say it was. You still get to the second part. So operation or intelligence activity within the responsibility and authority of the Director of National Intelligence. Well, the president is not within the responsibility and authority, not even or, it's within the responsibility and the authority of the Director of National Intelligence. And in law, when you write the word and versus or, it's huge, it's a big thing. So the president would have to be both under the responsibility, maybe you can make a claim he's under the responsibility, because Director of National Intelligence is responsible for everybody, but you put that word and in the statute, and authority. Well, he's definitely not. The president is definitely not under the authority of the director of national intelligence. The director is under the authority of the president, like every other cabinet level member is. He can be fired. The director of national intelligence can't walk into the Oval Office and tell him you're fired. Okay, that's how you know you're under somebody's authority, when they can fire you. That's a pretty easy way to tell. So the clear meaning of the statute, and again, you always look at the clear meaning of the statute when you're doing kind of legislative history or anything to kind of say, do we have to find some case law on this to interpret it? No, the clear meaning is the clear meaning, and this is actually pretty well written. It's very clear. I mean, so our current whistleblower wouldn't fit into the statute. Snowden didn't fit into the statute. They went after Snowden. They prosecuted Snowden, but they're not going to prosecute this current guy or go after him or talk bad about him because he's a hero, because he's against Trump, and they all hate the orange man. And that's how that goes. So, and then, of course, Pete Buttigieg tried to give some kind of stupid explanation about all this. So just punch this up. Distinguish between Trump whistleblower and Obama era leakers, which I'll tell you right now, totally wrong on. But anyway, just figured let you know he chimed into the whole story. So let me get back over here. And let me find me. Where am I? Boom. All right, there I am. So anyway, where are we at here? 7 o'clock. All right, guys. So, hey, good morning, evening. Just like look who's in the chat here. What do we got going on here tonight? Let's see. Dirty Hillary's a killer. Okay. Hey, that is great. So, let's see. Hey, you know, let's see how it goes here. All right. Is this how it works on my site? Okay. You can't say anything stupid. See, if you say something stupid, you don't belong here because this is not a stupid site. Okay. And you got to remember something. We're on YouTube. So I want you to remember that for a second. See, YouTube, they look for any reason to knock a conservative off. Okay. Any reason whatsoever. Okay. And then when you put stuff in the chat, if it's on the chat, since I have the ability to remove comments from the chat and to have moderators remove comments from the chat, if those comments aren't removed, it's the same thing as if I had said it. So if I say something on air, and I say, if you will, some of the two things I just saw written in the chat, YouTube would kick me off. Okay? They would. All right? Because I'm conservative, and they look for any reason to do so. And they got new terms of service coming out December 10th. Sticks and Amber talked about it. A few other people have talked about it. Pretty much it says, we can kick you off for any reason, and we don't have to even tell you why and give you any notice. You're just gone. So please, you know, it takes more than 2 minutes to put one of these shows together. See all the articles I had up on top there? Okay? Forget all the articles I read to get to those, okay? So anyway, don't put stupid stuff in my chat, okay? And if you can't handle that, don't come by. I can give you the names of 10 different sites right now where there are really stupid people hosting them and really stupid people on them. And you can go hang out there and be stupid. No problem. So there you go. Enough said about that. Anyway, thanks to the moderators for picking that up. Much appreciated. So anyway, that's pretty much about all I have for tonight. So anyway, I want to thank everybody who's been intelligent in the chat and everybody who's been watching us. Everybody will be watching us later. Thank you so much. And for Carl's Opinion, this is Carl, and we will see you next time on Carl's Opinion. Take care, guys. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.